Hello, everyone. It's the moment you all been waiting for. It's the moment that every crime enthusiast has been waiting for. The final part of the Mikey Dongwook story will finally be complete. 3 more parts from now. Before we get started with this podcast, I want to thank the very people, including myself, that helped initiate this content and who helped push it out and actually helped me through the journey in 2021 to actually push this content out, actually push the podcast out. And not only that, but actually edit the very first podcast I ever made on any sort of platform. So I want to thank the therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists that helped me at the time back in 2018-19, who helped me during that point. I am now, since the last podcast, I was 20 years old, I think. And now I'm almost 24 years old. I'm actually 23 years old. And since then, it's been a long journey. It's been a grinding journey to get through college. Got my 4-year bachelor's degree from IU Bloomington. And since then, it's been a journey. It's been a ride and it's been a journey, just like the story has. And so it's a lot's changed since then. But the story of Mikey Dongwook and the vicious attack that he caused leaves trauma for everyone involved. If you are triggered, or you happen to have, or you are a victim of sexual abuse and assault, I highly advise you turn this off. But it won't be like the one back in 2021 where I'm going to go into the meat and potatoes of sexual assault, abuse, all that stuff. This is going to be more about Mikey Coe, how he's been in prison, and updates that we got last year about him. Viewer discretion is advised, and we thank you for listening.
In the summer of 2019, a vicious stabbing occurred at a music camp at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. The victim was a 13-year-old girl who met a boy named Mikey Coe the previous year. She almost was raped and sexually assaulted in a locker room at the IU Music Center and was stabbed multiple times in the thigh and stomach. As vicious as the crime was that Mikey committed, no one sounded the alarm until I came into the picture. I am Braydyn, and I was once a victim of bullying and insults from Mikey Coe. I was a victim of middle school shoving the problem away to make me feel worse. I bullied myself in 2016 and committed suicides multiple times until my final one in March of 2017. Since then, I have been stable, got help and the right treatment, and I graduated high school and will be an incoming sophomore at Vincent in Indiana University. It took me a while to get into a stable discussion about this boy, but here I go as hard as it was. This is my story of encountering a rapist, a bully, and a classmate. This is time to be unchained.
This podcast is also in collaboration with the Lagodi Big Al Times. The Lagodi Big Al Times is Lagodi, Indiana's #1 newspaper. We want to make it that way, with new podcasts and stories and interesting things to share in the Martin County area. This is one of our only stories that we have of the Bloomington area. We hope to also share more stories across the state of Indiana. But if you want to go subscribe to our newspaper today, you can visit our newspaper at www.lagoditimes.com. You can also search for Lagodi Times on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The following podcast may be a Braydyn production, but it's also a byproduct of the Lagodi Big Al Times newspaper. Subscribe today and read our headlines only on the www.lagoditimes.com. Again, that's www.LOOGOOTEE.times.com. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening. This is it, the last part of the Unchained podcast. Part 2, a story of how I interacted with Mikey Dongwook and was one of his victims. As millions of people are going to be going off to college, and actually this year being the highest rated year for high school students to graduate from high school more than ever before, they're going to be setting their sights off to college. And while they're setting their sights off to college, we have to keep on asking ourselves, well, how do we keep our children safe? How do we keep our child safe? How do we keep our daughter safe? This is not just a story for boys. Of course, if you are a guy and you're listening to this story, I mean, I'm more than welcome for any man to even listen to this story because they need to know how to treat the women in their life a lot good. It's deep, it's systemic, and everybody knows that. Everybody knows that there is a problem with keeping our daughters and our sons safe in college sometimes. There's shootings, there is unfortunately shootings in the United States. There's unfortunately topics that we cannot even bring up. There's unfortunately things that we have to censor from our children, but this should not be one of those things. One of the most important things that we need to keep in mind when we are bringing our children to the forefront is that the camps they go to, whether that's Boys Town, Girls Town, whatever, it could be an IU Media School camp, it could be a camp at Newhouse College in Syracuse, it could literally be a camp over at Vincent University. It doesn't really matter where it's at. All that matters is that we keep our children safe. This has been a very emotional journey these last 6 years, and it's finally time for me to just press the pause button on this entire story and say goodbye to every single one of the Unchained viewers. We're not getting rid of our podcast, keeping things in the middle. We're going to keep it up. I didn't want you guys to think about that. We're not getting rid of this. We're getting rid of the Unchained podcast for good now. We cannot stand creating this stuff about Mikey. And now, as we've gotten to our final day, we have children that are unsafe. Children that may not feel safe at all. We have things and places that we need to go and things and places we need to move on from. And I will tell you that moving on from this story would be the best part of the entire year for me. It's been a good year for me so far after graduating school and everything. But being one of the victims and actually moving on is probably the hardest part. PTSD, it gets really hard to move on. And I know family members of mine that do have PTSD and that do have issues and problems with PTSD. I don't personally have PTSD, but I do know of other people that do have it. And I can tell you that every day is a fight, flight, or freeze response. And so we want to kind of dismantle the freeze part a little bit and the flight or flight part of this entire thing. Because believe it or not, it's good to keep history going. It's good to address crime. It's good to address people. And it's good to address this stuff. But how far does society have to go to make crime, as we see today, a major part of our society? There's people that are going through real suffering out there. And these people truly are who are getting hurt. Like the girl who was viciously attacked by Mikey Coe. And I cannot explain it enough. It's been out of high school. It's not high school anymore. And that's the big reason why I want to move on. But I want to preface in this last part of this entire show. And it's short today because I didn't have much to say. I didn't have a speech prepared or anything like that. I've always wanted to say it for a while, and I'm going to say it. I hope Mikey Coe can face punishment by God one day. I hope he can. I forgive him more and more and more every single day. I forgive all the victims of his attacks, and I want to hug them if I could, because they are all a part of my family. Not only are they a member of my family, they're also a member of who we know, how we know, and why we know what happened to everybody. I didn't want to treat women very bad, but I have in the past. I really have in the past. It's very hard to wrap your head around that, I know. But it's important to characterize that with any relationship that you have with a woman or a mother or a daughter or something like that, is that you treat them with kindness and respect. And I, to this point forward, never, ever, ever wanted to do that. I had such a horrible job in middle school and high school, treating anybody with respect, not just women. Authority, law enforcement, responsibility, any type of authority. I was very vigorous, and Mikey happened to be one of those kids that I was around during one of the darkest points in my life, and I wanted to emulate the behaviors of him and the people I was around. It ended up killing me, hurting me, and it hurt so many other people. I've hurt other people before in my past, but how do we move on from that? You have to. You just can't let it suppress you for the rest of your life. And as I'm heading off into the workforce, a place much darker than elementary, middle, or high school, and even college in some sense, I just want to put this case, this company to rest. Because if we don't keep this to rest, this will be on Spotify. This will be everywhere you find your podcasts. But I don't want this to continue. I don't want to have to continuously make episode after episode after episode once when we get more and more and more details about what's happening to this kid and what's happening to this man. Because who cares at this point? We've all moved on. My mom's moved on. My sister's moved on. My family's moved on. Everybody around us has moved on. But there's one person that hasn't, and it's that girl. And that girl is the number one person that I absolutely want to say is doing very well now and is being very successful, but will be traumatized and she will never move on from this stuff. But as long as I'm on the mic, as long as I might be in radio, as long as I want to do radio, this is over. This is over. And from the rest of the podcast schedule, we will continue with keeping things in the middle podcast, but we will never, hopefully never, bring this case back to light up again. And there was a new interest to this case, which is why part 2 was very interesting. And if you haven't listened to that, the link is down in the description below. But many of us will agree that this girl, we must provide her support. If you know her personally, provide her support because she's always going to need it for the rest of her life. She may be traumatized, she may be hurt. We can't just brush women off and treat them as nothing because they're not, because they are queens. They are princesses. But we can't view them as that in society. And that's why they say we should not treat them as that. And we should. Absolutely should. I'm going to say for the final time, everyone, the Unchained podcast, the chains have broken, the cave is open, and the floodgates are closed. No floods, just a scenic, calming ocean with fish and wildlife and seagulls flying and birds chirping and in sunshine. But for one person, it will continue to be dark for the rest of her life. And I hate it for her. And I hate it for every victim involved in Mikey's exuberant acts. They are not extraordinary. They are stupid and cowardly. I will say goodbye. Screw you, Mikey. And that's it. That is it. I wanted to say a cuss word, but I'm not going to do that right now. Thank you all so much. If it wasn't for you listening back in 2021, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I probably wouldn't be anywhere right now if it wasn't for the growth of this YouTube channel. Close to 2,000 people following us. And at the end of June, as we head into July, keep your children safe this summer. Especially keep your children safe during these summer camps because school is right around the corner. Can you believe it? School is right around the corner. And we have to protect our children. And we have to protect our little girls as they will become women. Stronger, mightier, meatier women who not only will be stronger mentally, but stronger physically after they go to college. It's something that a lot of us men don't really take into account. We need to protect the women and girls in our life. If we don't do that and we don't acknowledge that and we don't yell at them, I mean, that would be a perfect world if we didn't yell at them. But if we don't acknowledge them and we don't encourage them to be successful, they will fail and ultimately fall for traps like this. I do not like having to make this podcast, but now it's officially done. And we thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, and hopefully we never have to talk about Mikey Dongwook again. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good day.